three only?
We three, sir. And
Okay.
since it's 2:05, we can start.
Okay.
So a very good afternoon to one and all. Warm greetings from Biocon Biologics. My name is Reshma Susan Rechi, and I'm working as a medical science license in Biocon. So today we are here to discuss on the US FDA approved world first interchangeable biosimilar. The interchangeability approval will highly impact the patient access to quality insulin with an affordable price, empowering them in continuing insulin therapy to achieve better healthcare outcomes. For today's discussion, I invite Dr. Amit Kumar Sinha. So doctor has done his MBBS MD and AACE from the US. Doctor is working as a consultant diabetologist in Rupnapur in Patna. And doctor has an experience of 15 years. And he's a member and a speaker for RSSDI, IMA, SECON, DI, IDF, etc. And doctor has been a part of many clinical trials and has multiple publications in various journals. And doctor has been a speaker to various national conferences as well. So with this note, I would like to invite Dr. Amit Kumar for today's program. And we are looking forward from hearing from you, sir, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Reshmaji. She has given a brief introduction of myself. Thank you for inviting me as a speaker. Thank you, Biocon. We'll start.
I'll share the screen. Is it visible, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
So today is the webinar on interchangeability webinar. That is the first US FDA approved interchangeable biosimilar insulin, improving affordability among the diabetes patient. So the topic is this. So in next. What is biosimilar insulin? So it is a product. It is largely and generally complex molecule produced from the living organism, and it's similar to a reference product like a purity, molecular structure, bioavailability, and the pharmacokinetics and the pharmacodynamic studies, and the immunogenicity assessment. Next. What they are not. It's not a biobetter, it's not a biomimics, it's not a generic drugs. What is biobetter? Biobetter is improved version of originator biologic. What is biomimics or biocopies? It's the copies of licensed biological medicine that have not been subjected to a rigorous clinical testing or evaluated according to the biosimilar regulatory pathway. It is not a generic drug also, because generic drug is what? The small molecule chemically synthesized drugs using the same active ingredient, strength, dosage form, and route of administration. So it is not biobetter, it is not biomimic, it is not a generic drug. It is a biosimilar drug. Next. Now the question will come, important concern from the clinician about using this biosimilar products. What question? Is it immunogenetically as equal to reference Glargine, or its physiochemical characterization is how the physiochemical characterization, functional characterization, clinical performance, and is it sensitive? They have used sensitive test model for this biosimilar product, or the end product, whatever endpoints we need, they have achieved or not. So these are the important concerns from the clinicians. They will think. Next. Is there a need for the concern? biosimilar insulins are highly similar to the reference biologicals. So there is no need for the concern, no clinical meaningful difference. There is no clinically meaningful difference are there. Variability of the biosimilar is kept within the standard limits. The whatever the standard limits they have said is the variability will comes under that standard limits. Equivalent quality, safety and efficacy, stringent regulatory approval has done. Next. Now comes to this slide. The slide, just see. This is the originator development and this is the biosimilar development. In the originator development, they have done a huge clinical studies for the safety, efficacy, and immunogenicity, huge number. And from the, if you'll go through the biosimilar product, just see they have done in vitro studies more. They all focused on in vitro studies more. In the originator, they have focused more on the clinical studies. We have done also clinical studies. But in biosimilar, the in vitro studies are more. In vivo, that is non-clinical and PKPD was almost similar in the groups. Next. Robust clinical data will tell you. Next. Biocon insulin has done global trials over the world. The clinical trial of the Biocon biosimilar insulin, the Glargine, has done in 7 clinical trials in 1,915 patients in the overall 20 countries. It started from the global phase 3 trials in type 1 diabetes patients. Our number of patients was 558, and that is done in US, Canada, and the extension of that around number of patients was 127. Then they have done in global phase 3 trial in type 2 diabetes in Jordan's Republics of Korea. They have done on the non-inferiority to inverter. Indian phase 3 study are done. It's completed non-inferiority to innovator. They have done PKPD study trials in Japan, phase 3 trials in Japan. The overall duration in that period is 52 weeks. So globally, they have done 7 clinical trials, around 1,915 patients over the 20 countries. Next. Now come to the study, that is INSTRIDE 1 study. This study has done in the type 1 diabetes patients to determine the, whether the biosimilar insulin Glargine once daily is non-inferior to the reference insulin Glargine once daily. They have done a study design of this sample is multi-centric randomized control trial. They have done for the 558 type 1 diabetes patient with the age group of 18 to 65, treated with once daily insulin Glargine for at least 3 months. The HbA1c of that group is less than 9.5% at the screening. Next. So, INSTRIDE 1 study design, they have done a screening for 4 weeks, then they have initiated dose titration, they have done everything in running weeks, that is 6 weeks, then randomization. 2 groups, one is Biocon insulin Glargine, and another is a reference insulin Glargine for 52 weeks. And then follow up for the 4 weeks. What the primary endpoints? That is non-inferiority margin, that is upper limit of 2 standard deviations, clear 95% of confidence interval. For the difference in mean changes from the baseline to the endpoint of HbA1c was no greater than 0.4% at week 24. The secondary endpoint, we have seen the HbA1c changes from the initial administration to the 52 weeks, and change in fasting plasma glucose we have seen, secondary endpoint. The change in insulin dosage, because if we want sometimes if one insulin will be having some dose, another is insulin having the greater dose or a smaller dose, then we cannot compare that. So for that, We have done change in insulin dosage also, self-monitoring of blood glucose, home glucose monitoring, that is also. Secondary endpoints, we have seen safety, that is hypoglycemic events, how much, the other adverse effects, adverse reaction, and the immunogenicity, the anti-drugs, antibodies, how much they have formed. Next. Just see the graph. In this graph, blue lines, it shows the Biocon insulin, and the gray line showing the reference insulin. The actual HbA1c over a time, non-statistical significant differences in actual HbA1c profiles were observed between the treatment groups over the time. Just see the 52 weeks, you'll see the overlapping of this. There is no difference, no significantly difference. Next. The mean actual Glargine dose over the time, it's also showing the gray line and blue line. Blue line is Biocon insulin and gray line is the reference insulin. Just see no statistically significant difference we have seen with the mean increase in daily Glargine doses were seen between the treatment groups, both the treatment groups. We have not seen any significantly difference. Next. So anytime and nocturnal hypoglycemia incidence of any time, that is this one, up one, and the nocturnal hypoglycemia were also comparable between the two treatment groups. So both the groups, they are showing almost equal episode of anytime hypoglycemia or the nocturnal hypoglycemia. Next. So conclusion, what conclusion we have derived from this study? The upper bound of 95% of confidence interval for the mean change in HbA1c from the baseline to 24 weeks was within non-inferiority margin of 0.4%. This is the main, what we are showing, the non-inferiority margin of 0.4%. It proves non-inferiority of the Biocon insulin Glargine versus the reference product. Second, change in HbA1c and fasting plasma glucose levels were baseline to 52 weeks. Both are almost similar. Both the basal and bolus insulin dose level did not differ between the groups. Rate of hypoglycemia and other adverse effects were also comparable between the two groups. This is the conclusion we found it from the INSTRIDE 1 trial study. Next. Coming to that one, INSTRIDE 1 has done in type 1 diabetes, INSTRIDE 2 has done on type 2 diabetes. This is non-inferiority study to compare the efficacy and safety of Biocon insulin Glargine with the reference Glargine in type 2 diabetes mellitus. Next. The objectives is similar. Study design is multicentric, randomized. The sample size was 5560 type 2 patients. The population, what population criteria we have seen? The type 2 diabetes for at least 1 year before screening. They are taking oral anti-diabetic agent for last 3 months before screening. Either insulin naive or insulin Glargine once daily at a stable dose for at least 3 months before screening. We have done a screening, same pattern. Then randomization we have done. One is Biocon insulin Glargine for 24 weeks. Another group is reference insulin Glargine for 24 weeks. And then follow-up we have done 4 weeks. Next. Come see this slide also. Almost same. INSTRIDE 1 or INSTRIDE 2. Mean actual HbA1c over time. The not significantly difference. It's blue line is Biocon insulin Glargine and gray is overlapping. There is no significant difference between these two groups. Next. The mean actual Glargine doses, in this also there is no significant difference between the Biocon insulin Glargine and the reference insulin Glargine in the dose over the time. Next. Incidence of anytime and nocturnal hypoglycemia. This is also overlapping to each other. So this graph, upper one is showing the anytime hypoglycemia and lower one showing nocturnal hypoglycemia. There is also no statistically significant difference was observed in incidence of anytime or nocturnal hypoglycemia between these two groups. The conclusion is almost same. The mean change in HbA1c was similar in patient with type 2 diabetes in both the group. So that result demonstrated that the insulin glargine is non-inferior to the reference insulin glargine in patient with type 2 diabetes. Change in fasting plasma glucose from the baseline to 24 weeks was similar in both the groups. Dosage, insulin glargine dosage level did not differ between the groups, and rate of hypoglycemia and other adverse effects were also comparable between the two groups. Both the conclusion was same. That is done for type 1 patient. This is done on type 2 patients. Next. Coming to the INSTRIDE 3. This is the continuation of INSTRIDE 1. Because we have seen the non-inferiority. Now we want to see the immunogenicity, safety, efficacy. For that, they have done the INSTRIDE 3 trials, that is to assess the efficacy, insulin dose, safety, and immunogenicity when the people with type 1 diabetes mellitus switched between the Biocon insulin glargine and the reference insulin glargine. Next. The overview of the INSTRIDE 3 study. After the continuation of the INSTRIDE 1 study, we have divided them into two arms. One group is arm A, one is arm B. Just see switching sequence in arm A. First 12 weeks, we have given Biocon insulin glargine plus Lispro, that is period 1 for the first 12 weeks. Then we switched to the reference insulin glargine plus Lispro, that is the period 2 for the another 12 weeks. Again, switch back to the same Biocon insulin glargine and Lispro, that is period 3 for the 12 weeks. This is the one arm, that is the arm A. And another arm we have taken, arm B, the reference insulin glargine and Lispro. Here switching is not there. This is not switching sequence. Upper one is the switching sequence. Both are totally done for 36 weeks. And then end of trial visit at 36 weeks we have seen. And then follow-up visit at the week of 40. This is the robust design with the adequate switch period. This is the main things of this whole trial. We have done switchover and then we have seen the results. Next slide. Just see changing in HbA1c from the baseline to 36 weeks. What is this? The graph. Lastly, at 36 weeks, we are seeing both the red and the blue, both almost similar. So change in HbA1c from baseline to week 36 with Biocon insulin glargine, that is switching sequence, was equivalent to the reference insulin glargine. When we have changed insulin glargine, Biocon insulin glargine with at 12 weeks to the reference insulin glargine, we have seen that there is a little bit dip in the HbA1c. But finally, what we have find out, both the results are same. Next. The safety endpoint, what we have seen, anytime hypoglycemic events were comparable in both the sequence throughout the study. So overall incidence of any hypoglycemia events were comparable between the two sequences. So there is no severe hypoglycemic events occurred at any time point in the study. Next. Now, this is one of the main things, immunogenicity. We have to see this. See the slide, red and blue, almost similar. So no statistical difference comparing the change from the baseline between the two treatment sequence at any schedule visit. This showing the cross reactivity of the insulin antibody percent binding over the time of treatment. The Glargine demonstrated equivalent efficacy. The line, this last line, very much important for this INSTRIDE 3 trials. What was the objective? We finalized, we got the objective. The Glargine demonstrated equivalent efficacy, safety, and immunogenicity, demonstrating that the patient taking reference insulin Glargine can safely switch to Biocon insulin Glargine because it is equivalent in efficacy, safety, and immunogenicity. Next. So various places they will tell the international perspectives on the interchangeability. They'll tell the FDA and US Congress they'll tell that the biological product may be substituted for a reference without the intervention of the healthcare provider. What WHO will tell? The interchangeability should be based on appropriate clinical data. Potential safety issues should be considered during the biosimilar product. Next. What are the recommendations for switching to a biosimilar insulin? Various places they have told. There's diabetes UK. If the people with the diabetes choose to switch to the biosimilar insulin, they should be encouraged because next. Another study they have approved, FDA approved first interchangeable biosimilar insulin product for the treatment of diabetes. They have published on July 28, 2021. They have approved of this interchangeable insulin Glargine can provide patient with additional safe, high quality, and potentially cost-effective option for treating diabetes patient. And interchangeable biosimilar products may be substituted for the reference product without the intervention of the prescriber. This is told by FDA. Next. The FDA Commissioner Janet Kudok, they also approved same thing. The Peterson Stain, that the MD Director of the Office of New Drugs, they also told confident in the safety and effectiveness of an interchangeable biosimilar product, just as they would for the reference products. Next. Now just see this red one and the blue one. This is the reference insulin Glargine. This is the biosimilar. That is what the difference. When we have a reference insulin Glargine, that is reserved for a patient who is affordable because of cost. And when the cost is more, so we cannot give to so many patients. And we have to start little late also, because affordability will concern always. So late, that time we will give little late will insulinization. And then during that time only so much of complication will develop. So rise in complication because of late insulinization. Why late insulinization? Because of the cost. So because everything's rising economic burden to the patient, insurers, even government, NGOs. With the Biocon, with biosimilar insulin, ease out with the biosimilar. Why? That is moved towards affordability and an optimal therapy. Product cost is less, so early starting, that is timely insulinization will occur, and that will reduce all about the complication will develop, that reduce the morbidity and even mortality of the patient. And ultimately, what will achieve? The cost saving, healthcare cost saving, even for the patient, even for the NGO, even for the government. So, and the complication also will reduce. Next. So biosimilar insulin Glargine is about 16 to 48% economical than the reference insulin Glargine. Compare with the per unit cost of insulin Glargine. See, the biosimilar insulin Glargine vials are 48% more affordable than the reference product, the vial. And for the cartridge, biosimilar insulin Glargine, cartridge was 16% more affordable than the reference product. Now the reference product's cost has increased. So this 16% has increased to 30%. So for cartridge, the biosimilar insulin Glargine cartridge, there are 30% more affordable than the reference product. Next. Now we'll see the patient profile considering for the switching. Just we'll see the case profile of one that is currently on disposable Lantus. The patient was on disposable Lantus. See, the patient is 43 years old gentleman working as a professor in engineering college, has diabetes since 4 to 5 years, comes for dysglycemia values and is convinced for the need of injectable for better glycemic control. He is on metformin 1000 milligram BD, glimepiride 4 milligram OD, vildagliptin 50 milligrams BD, and insulin Lantus 8 unit OD for the last 30 days. That is disposable insulin. And the patient body metabolic index was 31.5%, fasting glucose 108, postprandial was 178. HbA1c 7.1, little higher. What is the key inference for this patient? If patient is taking insulin dose of Lantus disposable pain, it is very much costly. If we'll switching the patient to the basal log, the patient can take for longer time and the affordability cost will also decrease. Next. Case profile 2. Basal to bolus, basal plus. This is the 55 years old man working in corporate company, smoker, alcoholic occasionally, diabetes mellitus since 7.5 years, currently on met 1000 BD, sulfonyl urase 2 milligram BD, Lantus 22 units from last 5 years, Voglibos 0.3 milligram, sometimes BD and TID doses. His fasting blood sugar was 110 and postprandial was 212. HbA1c is little high, little no, it is more actually 8.6. And the BMI of that patient is 30.5. It's hypertensive, but on telmisartan, the BP was 138/82. And absence of knee reflex, that is knee reflex, that's showing the microvascular complication. So this is the right candidate for basal plus therapy. We'll give basal plus therapy. So long-standing diabetes with a microvascular complication, high dose of insulin unit per day, high cost therapy. Again, if we'll switch to biosimilar insulin Glargine, that is Biocon insulin, basal log, including the other medication, now shifting from basal to basal plus will help. The cost will come down because he has to take on continuous basis on the large amount of insulin, and the medicine also is taking those. The patient will feel better because of cost. It will come down. Next. Profile 3, third patient, the basal plus to basal bolus. The 50 years old government employees, diabetes since 10 years on metal, glimepiride, vildagliptin, Lantus 22 units OD since last 4 years, injection aspart, afternoon last 2 years, and methylcobalamin. BP was almost okay, 136/90. Systemic examination, visual floaters was present. So cerebrovascular complication. Fasting was 101, postparental 234, HbA1c again, PP and HbA1c is high. Change in the therapy, patient moving from basal plus to basal bolus. We have to give 3 times bolus. So long extending diabetes with cerebrovascular complication, already on basal plus regimen, that the cost is more. Now we move from the basal plus to basal bolus. Again, the biosimilar insulin Glargine will give, the cost will come down. So for the patient affordability, it will be always good. Next. Case study 4, currently on basal, 52 years old housewife has diabetes mellitus since 10 to 12 years. On metformin full dose, glimepiride 4 milligram, Lantus 28 units for the last 6 years. On telmisartan, taking aspirin, underwent angioplasty 5 to 6 years back. Already developed cardiovascular complication. BMI was 29. Fasting blood glucose 100, PP 198, HbA1c 7. Almost okay. We have to more focus on PPBS. So HbA1c will come down. So long extending diabetes patient with high Lantus dose, control glycemic parameters patient has with cardiovascular complication. Here also, because of last 6 years, insulin Lantus 28 units, whatever the unit they are taking, it has more cost. When we will switch over to biosimilar insulin Basal, it will reduce the prices. So burden with the multiple drugs along with reference insulin Glargine, the cost is again high. So when we move from the reference insulin Glargine to the Basal, the cost will come down. Next. So summary of this whole study. The 4 patient, whatever see, everything will come over here. Currently on disposable Lantus, reduce the cost of insulin therapy with the similar efficacy and safety. Basal and to basal plus also, switching to Biocon Glargine will compensate the additional cost increment of the basal therapy. If patient was on basal plus, we have to move to basal plus to basal bolus. That also switching the Biocon Glargine will compensate the additional cost increment of basal therapy. Currently on controlled on high dose of Lantus. Also, if we'll switch over to the Biocon Glargine, reduce the cost and bring similar efficacy and safety. So ultimate, whatever we've got, the cost effectiveness, if we use biosimilar products, like if we are using insulin Glargine reference, insulin Glargine, the cost is too much. If we use biosimilar insulin Glargine like Biocon, Basal, the cost will come down. The burden for the people will come down. Burden for the country will come down. Burden for the whole world will come down. And the complication, if we'll start little early, because cost is less, if we'll start little early, then the complications also will come down. Complication won't be there that much. So better to start early whenever it's needed, insulin, and try with the biosimilar insulin Glargine. See, if you try it in your patient. I am trying myself for the so many patients. I am happy with the SMBG profile, whatever the home monitoring, blood glucose, whatever chart I'm giving. I'm very much happy. That's why I'm giving them a biosimilar insulin Glargine, that is Biocon Glargine Basal. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Doctor, for this wonderful presentation as well as enlightening us today on biosimilar insulins. So now we are open to question and answer sessions. So, sir, could you please share your clinical experience in using reference insulin Glargine versus the biosimilar insulin Glargine?
See, I have a lots of patients, even so many doctors, mother relatives used to come to me. I have started directly insulin Basal only, and I find out whatever my patient, maximum patient I am using Basal only. Maximum. I'm giving Lantus also. I'm giving Glargine 300 also, but ultimate cost of Basal will be lesser compared to the other insulin. So patient is also not complaining anything. Sometimes when you used to give a reference insulin, the cost will always matter. The people don't want to take a continuous basis. So they'll always tell sir, बहुत ज़्यादा cost हो रहा है, so हमको नहीं हो पाएगा, तो आप सर कुछ वैसा करो, क्योंकि and there are so many patients. I have in Bihar, I have from last 1.5 years, 27 type 1 diabetes patient also. For them also, affordability is very much problematic. They all come from poor socioeconomic status. So I am giving Biocon insulin Basal. I am very much happy, and future also I'll give, because I have not got any complaint till now.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your clinical experience as well. And sir, how do you convince your patients in initiating insulin therapy?
See, my actual funda is I'll start with a metformin. I'll see DPP4 inhibitors should added or sulfonamides should added or not. I'll see the HbA1c, how much it is. And then based on that, I will give first medicine. I don't start directly insulin. I'll give medicine. I'll try with metformin, DPP4, SGLT2, even sulfonamide, urease. And then I'll tell the patient to do SMBG, self-monitoring of blood glucose in home. I'll tell usually based on the blood glucose levels, interval of 3 days, do the blood sugar level. 1 day we'll do fasting. 3rd day we'll do post-prandial, after breakfast, 2 hours after breakfast. Again 3rd day, before lunch, 15 minutes before lunch. Again 3rd day, 2 hours after lunch. Again 3rd day, 15 minutes before dinner, and again 3rd day, 2 hours after dinner. Some patient, type 1 diabetes patient, I used to tell 3 a.m. Just get up at 3 a.m., do the blood sugar and write it. We'll see the reports and will interfere what to do or not. So if they'll bring my all patient will buy glucometer also. If they'll bring the SMBG chart, then based on that, how much the tablets, whatever the tablet I'm giving, how much benefit they have that occurs. Based on that, we'll decide on to start insulin or not. Every time, maximum the chances I'll start with long acting only. And then if it is needed, like if CKD patient is a kidney problem patient, if type 1 diabetes, directly basal bolus, that is the only. Kidney problem patient also, I'll give basal bolus only. So I'll see the reports, I'll see the SMBG profile, then only we'll decide.
Thank you, Doctor, for answering all our questions as well as sharing your clinical experience. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. So before closing today's session, we have certain feedback questions to the audience. So Arpita, could you please display the feedback questions? And the audience, this is for the audience only, sir. And audience, please choose the options which you feel is apt. Thank you, Arpita. And once again, thank you, Dr. Amit Kumar Sinha, for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule, sir. Thank you so much on behalf of Biocon Biologics. And thanks to all the participants who have joined us. And I wish you a good evening and stay safe. Thank
One
you so much.
last take-home message. Thank you, Reshma ji. Thank you, Arpita. Thank you, Biocon. Last take-home message is that you do your clinical practice, you decide yourself what is best. You try with this product, see what benefit you are getting, and then you'll decide. So I find out myself personally, for the patient, it is cost effectiveness that matters because patient has to take it longer duration. So cost effectiveness always matters. Thank you, Biocon. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.